Christopher Columbus is someone who means a great deal to the Italian Americans of New York City. We are concerned about preserving his legacy. We acknowledge the faults that he may have had, but we are asking the public to judge him through the lens of the era in which he lives. We're asking the mayor and city council speaker to judge the legacy he leaves for Italian Americans in New York City, and we're asking both of them to remove Christopher Columbus from consideration for this list.
All right, that was New York City Councilman, a guest frequently on the show, and again today, Joe Borelli there with Joe Piscopo, among others, fighting to keep a Christopher Columbus statue there to New York City Minority Whip Joe Borelli and former Obama campaign staffer Andrew Feldman. Gentlemen, welcome to both of you. Yep. You were there arguing not just as an Italian-American, but you were essentially saying this is going too far. Yeah. Right?
Look, I was there as a New Yorker, and I think we should put this in context. There was a rally that I hosted with our friend Joe Piscopo yesterday about Christopher Columbus. He has very deep roots in the New York community. There was another rally just down the block by some Democratic Dominican colleagues who were protesting the removal of Juan Pablo Duarte, who was one of the founding fathers of the Dominican Republic. De Blasio and others are forcing modern-day people to re-engage in 400, 200, 300-year-old battles, and it's making us become more tribal than we've ever been before. I think we have to acknowledge where this started from. There was sort of a rational conversation over the legacy of the Civil War and how we memorialize the Confederacy and Reconstruction. Right. Then Trump said, who's next? And the media instantly downplayed and just disapproved of the fact that he even asked that. Not 12 hours later.
I think the disapproval was more about equating the two groups that were protesting.
But not even 12 hours later, you had people on television, you had elected officials validating what he said by calling for Washington and Jefferson. Here it was Columbus, etc.
All right. Well, Andrew, what about, you know, I'm just wondering, where does it stop? Because I thought the jump the shark moment was yesterday with ESPN and this Robert Lee broadcaster. It's gotten a little ridiculous, hasn't it?
Look, I think Christopher Columbus is probably crossing the line here, right? I think we should be focused on the Confederacy, Robert E. Lee. I think that is a focus here. Because remember, Robert E. Lee didn't even want statues of himself or the Civil War to be memorialized. He said we need, you know,
So why now? Do you agree with it, or just eradicate his memory, statues, universities named after him, and Jefferson Day and all of that?
No. I mean, I think that this is part of history. And I agree with the president when he says that. But guess what? History should be taught and should be remembered in a museum.
But how can it be remembered if people don't go to those museums? They want to be reminded in a park.
No, it's not. It's not a place for public land. It's not a place for public
place.
What
if you populate the park with statues of Martin Luther King or Arthur Ashe or even Barack Obama?
That's what Richmond, Virginia did.
Completely different. Completely different. Barack Obama, he was not someone. Is not someone who advocated the oppression of our people.
No, but my point is, and others have raised this as well. You've probably heard that the reminder of how far African Americans, for example, have come since those times, since these generals are progressive.
Sure, but let me also remind you of this, that these statues were not erected right after the Civil War. Right?
Why is it an issue now, is what I'm saying?
Because tensions in our country have reached a point where our president
So you could have removed them in the late 50s or 60s.
And they have been, let's remind ourselves that they have been removed in places across the country, you know, over the years, and there hasn't been this big uproar, right? Because local municipalities chose to do what they chose to do.
But others didn't, right? Others didn't. So where do you see this going? Because I think both your point, you agree on this much, you can go a little too far with this stuff. But when I've had African-American guests on, they always say, well, isn't the bigger issue how we're treating people today, and isn't the educational value in seeing how far we've come from that point?
Right, and these people need to be put in context of their era and not in the modern era. And to your question that you asked, Andrew, what happened now is Trump derangement syndrome. And we really see that with Nancy Pelosi, where all of a sudden she decided that these statues have to come out of the Capitol. A story just broke today that it was her father who dedicated these Confederate monuments in Baltimore.
Well, to be fair to her, I mean, that was her father, and that was 1948. My only point was, she's been walking by these statues in the Capitol for decades now. It's become an issue now.
And that's my point. Neil, there's nothing else more evident that people are imperfect.
Look at where our
country
is right now. Look at what's going on in our streets. Look at what has been going on for years. We've reached a point where this, I think, needs to happen to create healing I honestly believe that.
You don't think there's an agenda item here, maybe not to
No.
you, that a lot of people say the more we deflect and get into this thing, the more unlikely it is that this president can make progress.
No,
on
I don't
it.
think this is about the president. The more he has
I'm not saying you, but I do see a lot of
because
people
the president. I don't agree with that, Neil, because the president can't even get along, or with his own party, with Mitch McConnell to get things done. Right? If he could talk to
You
Mitch
don't think this
McConnell-
is at all an overreaction?
This is not an overreaction. No, I say Christopher Columbus is an overreaction, right?
Don't say that just because we're Italian
I'm not.
Americans.
No, I'm not. I'm not. Look, but I got to ask you this, and I honestly was thinking this. My grandparents are Holocaust survivors, okay? My grandparents came over here, welcomed into this country after surviving Nazi Germany. And now we're having this debate about what kind of America do we want? What do we want our values to be?
Do you think the president's anti-Semitic when he has so many
I don't
prominent Jewish financiers in his administration and at Trump Tower?
I have been very concerned about the president's reaction. I'm not going to.
But if he were a bigot in that regard, then he wouldn't have any single Jew in his cabinet in his business dealings, right?
But how about
Look,
the
I'm
point
not
of
going to say that. I
monuments?
don't know what he's saying to Jared Kushner.
But if he were a
behind the
bigot,
scenes.
but wait a minute, if he were a bigot, then he wouldn't be any close to.
Gary Cohn is Jewish and is head of his National Economic Council.
Right.
Okay?
Steve Mnuchin is his treasury
Okay,
secretary.
but
Jared
and did
Kushner
you
is
see
his
what came
son-in-law.
out today? That
Jared
Gary
Kushner
Cohn
is his son-in-law.
Yeah, and we haven't heard from Jared Kushner. And Gary Cohn said he drafted his resignation letter after Charlottesville. Let me ask you this.
And why do you think the president refused it?
I think the president should feel ashamed, and maybe he does. Maybe he apologized
But
to Gary Cohn.
if he were anti-Semitic, he would just happily take it, right?
Look, I'm not going to sit here today and tell you the president's anti-Semitic. I think he's had
Many
some
have,
very.
and I don't
think
see
he's
the
had
proof of
some
it.
very concerning comments. And I also got to ask you this about these comments, right? Have you guys been to Germany?
Yes.
Right. I've been to Germany. I've been to Berlin last year. When we go to Berlin, we don't see statues of Nazi soldiers or Hitler.
No,
Those are in museums.
Well, you're not
They were-
equating them
you
with the
brought up-
Confederate.
No, well, I am
But
telling
no,
you,
he brought up the Holocaust, and I've been to Poland, in Auschwitz. And you know what
And
they
those are
didn't, and you know
museums.
what, but you know what they didn't do to Auschwitz? They didn't remove it. They left it up as a reminder.
As a
The
museum.
experience was more powerful.
But you both agree we've gotten a little extreme.
Oh, it's Trump derangement syndrome.
All right. Well, hopefully we'll get over this one way or the other.
I don't know.
Gentlemen, seriously, I want to thank you. I want to thank you all. In the meantime, we are waiting for this news from Governor Greg Abbott of Texas, dealing front and center with what is going on with Hurricane Harvey. Casey Stiegel in Galveston right now, right in the path of that.